Woodlawn is one of the fastest growing and changing communities in all of the city. It's also an epicenter of culture and history.
So we are here today on the south side of Chicago in Jackson Park to officially break ground on the Obama Presidential Center.
Over the weekend, Tiger Woods shared that former President Obama called him about a golf course project on the south side of Chicago.
Today on Afrotech News, Nike goes in with Obama's Presidential Center.
Yeah, for 61st Street, a new series. That's right, on AMC.
The nonprofit group BIG, or Blacks in Green, plans to convert the property into a museum and community theater, celebrating the role of the Great Migration.
For our community, change hasn't always come easy, knowing that we wouldn't always be the ones spearheading what the change meant for our lives later. In August of 2020, New York and D.C. received its first bus of migrants from the southern border in Texas. Governor Abbott sent over 8,000 migrants to the northern cities as a response to Joe Biden's new policy at the border.
The border does not come cheap. Securing the border would cost Texas nothing if the federal government was doing its job, but because Joe Biden is not securing the border, the state of Texas is having to step up and spend Texas taxpayer money doing the federal government's job. Texans have the backbone and the will to secure a border, two things that Joe Biden does not have.
Texas has sent another bus of migrants away from the state, this one arriving in Chicago last night.
But let me also say this. Shame on Governor Abbott. What he is doing is immoral, unpatriotic, and it defies the values of who we are as Americans.
That was Mayor Lori Lightfoot sharing her frustrations as Chicago received its first bus of asylum seekers overnight. The reality is that this was challenging for the city as a whole, but soon it would hit home.
The seemingly done deal stunned residents.
There are other places that you guys could have done this with.
We want real transparency.
Did you call us here to find out what we wanted, or did you call us here to tell us what you're going to give us?
What you just heard were the voices of local community members and stakeholders who were frustrated with the mayor's office as they voiced concerns about a local elementary school that had been closed for 8 years becoming an asylum seekers shelter.
So the initial correspondence I received was end of October, early November. I received an email for an emergency virtual meeting. Our alderwoman had just got word that Wadsworth School was being worked on and prepared to receive asylum seekers that were going to be brought into our community.
Alderwoman Jeanette Taylor in the 20th Ward race. Taylor claims she wasn't included in the initial discussions about housing the asylum seekers at the former Wadsworth Elementary School building.
So literally you're making decisions about a building in my community without the person who's elected to represent the people. So that's been my issue. You don't impose things on us. You wouldn't do this in Lincoln Park or High Park.
After hearing from Sunshine's executive director, Kimberly Sally, and Alderwoman Jeanette Taylor, it was obvious to see why the community was in such an uproar, but I also wanted to get another perspective of someone who lived right around the corner from Wadsworth Elementary School. She's a stakeholder and a diversity leader, Carlos Gilbert.
One community, one voice. And that has been one of my biggest focuses. I want to ensure that what we all need, we're all on the same page. I speak because I've been in numerous meetings and conversations with other neighbors and other owners, homeowners. And so we all feel the same way. And we all believe that if you want to have a major impact, then it has to be one voice. And we should unite as a community.
As the news of this new shelter began to unravel itself around the city and even the country, many pointed to the Woodlawn community and accused it of being prejudiced. How could you, a black community, not receive immigrants? But that's not quite what the community was saying.
We are not anti-immigrant. We are pro-Woodlawn.
The issue isn't that of race or welcoming others. Actually, the Woodlawn community has traditionally been a very welcoming community, welcoming settlers from all over the world. The reality is that I think this community has a lot of scars and brokenness from windy politics. Oh, if you didn't know, our city is called the Windy City, not because we get cold, but because of the hot air of the politicians and the shifty politics.
So let me start with the posturing of the city. Okay. And so they were not very respectful. In that meeting, there were a lot of things that were misspoken that didn't align. You know, there was one conversation where the city was saying this. When we got to that meeting, they were saying that they initially started working on rehabbing Wadsworth School to make it a training facility for carpentry for the city of Chicago. In the midst of them preparing for people that are foreigners to this country, what about the needs of the community and the constituents that are here? And then in hearing the preparation, it also just reminded you again of the disinvestment and the lack of regard for the people here.
Just to kind of like keep going with this, I took it upon myself and I reached out to Little Village, the Little Village Council, because I saw them on the news. Mm-hmm. So I reached out to them. They were very open, and they actually have been reaching out to the mayor's office because they are equipped. This is what they do in that community.
Right.
They actually take in, immigrants. Policemen will drop immigrants off in their neighborhood because they have what is needed.
They had the infrastructure. Yeah.
Yep, and they were very open. But what I found out is that some of the members of the council, they were asylum seekers at one time too. So they know, they have the experience, and they know what it takes. So why not put them in a community where they would thrive? They won't thrive here.
I've read numerous editorials from different publications and listened to interviews about this situation, but there's one voice that stands out to me. It was on a Zoom meeting that I listened to where a community member said, "I feel like this is a done deal. And if this is a done deal, we don't have any more things to say. It's over with. It's done." He wasn't a prophet or someone who had an amazing dream like Joseph. He was a community member, a person who had a vested interest in the welfare of his community, because he had been here for over 30 years. The reality is that for many, this was just business as usual. And on February 2nd, a Thursday afternoon, the asylum seekers moved into Wadsworth community without the approval of the community.
Like, what are you going to do to set them up for success? So when they got here, I had a couple of neighbors literally come knock on my door because when they arrived, it was 0-degree weather. We saw people walking around in white t-shirts. Now, being from Chicago, we know that white t-shirts, that can reference a gang. They don't know that. One of my neighbors, she was Spanish speaking. And so she actually was communicating with them to try and tell them what safety measures they need to take. She also wanted to see if we could collect, jackets and coats for them because they're walking around with no coats. Well, we're not allowed to do that. No one is allowed to go to the facility. They're not allowed to speak to us. The security said that, they're not allowed to talk to the community.
As we wrapped up our time together, I asked both Kimberly and Carlos how would they leverage their organizations to best serve our new neighbors and the community moving forward.
And one of our core values is radical hospitality. And so, as we got together and met initially when things were happening the first of the year, we had already said that we are willing as an organization to avail ourselves to do whatever we can within our capacity, and so we want to engage in mutually meaningful relationships that are both transformational and redemptive. And for them, they've been through so much already, and so they've come to America, to live a life where there is some, redemption and some transformation from what they've been subjected to. And so whatever part we can play in that, we're willing to. So as we are on these calls, we are definitely advocates for Indigenous people of our community. Charity begins at home, but we are also, feel like we have the capacity to reach out and help our brothers and sisters, from whatever country, to help them live a quality of life that they deserve.
They're still not being set up for success being here in Woodlawn. I am still working with the little village to get them moved over there. Now, I don't know if that can happen, but it delayed them moving in October. Sure. Our voices did. So it's doing something. I feel like the city is listening to us. It needs to be a facility that directly, positively impacts the community. Okay. And that needs to be the narrative for Wadsworth. Okay. So the fight continues. They're hearing us. I do want what's best for the asylum seekers. We all deserve a great life. We all do. And so why not set them up for success?
If we really want to be honest about the situation, the reality is that this is a lot more gray than we want to admit. Governor Abbott in Texas is trying to figure out how to best alleviate the tax dollars as well as the tension at the border that his people is facing. The people in the north who are receiving buses, those cities are trying to figure out how to allocate funds and resources and create systems for something they've never encountered. And the people in the communities are still trying to figure out how to best grapple with the trauma we already have and the brokenness on behalf of crooked politicians in the past, while still loving our neighbors. This is a broken system. And we as people of God, we as people who are thinking deeply about loving our neighbors as well as taking care of our own people who are already amongst us, we have to think deep and pray and ask God to provide individuals who are brilliant enough to help us create a way forward. Thank you for spending some time with me. I'm C.W. Allen, and this is Sunshine Gospel Ministries. God bless.